everyone, and welcome to a special video today. I have a super easy crochet fingerless glove patterns that I thought it would be fun to give a tutorial for. They work up super quick, they're super crochet beginner friendly, and so yeah, let's dive in. So the materials you're going to use today are a size 4 worsted weight yarn. I just have a white hair with sparkles, and I also chose to pair it with a skein of mohair. You don't have to use mohair for this pattern. I just like the fuzziness, extra fuzziness that it gives to the glove. I did finish one glove to show you what it looks like. Put it on here. So it's a super simple pattern. We're going to work back loop only crochet for the wrist ribbing, and then a half double crochet alternate through front loop and back loop, and then a single crochet at the top, and just seam together along the sides. So a pretty simple pattern. So besides our yarn, you're going to use a 5mm crochet hook, where you're going to need a tape measure and a darning needle. Okay, so first we're going to double up our regular skein of worsted and our mohair, put them together, and we're going to chain 14. So I'm going to start with my slip stitch here, and we're going to chain 14. Okay, so this is going to be for the arm here. So if you choose to go up farther, all you would have to do is add a couple more chains, but as for now, this is the length that I chose, so I'm just going to stop there at 14. Next, we're going to just single crochet down the chain. Just make sure you don't lose your mohair along the way. Chain 1 at the end and turn. So next we're just going to single crochet into the back loop only. I'm going to crochet about 6 inches. That seems to be the measurement for my wrist. When we get to the end there, you can decide if you want to add or actually decrease rows to get the circumference that you want for around your wrist. So I'm going to go ahead and single crochet back loop only for 6 inches. Okay, so I'm coming up to my my last stitch there. So I went my last stitch. Now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to turn. Now I'm going to repeat this until I get my 6 inches. Okay, so I have finished my 6-inch ribbing. Just to give you a reference, that's the amount that I use to go around my wrist, and now is a good time to add on more rows if you need to, or less rows, and then after that we're going to start the next part. So on your last row we are going to chain 1, and then we're going to keep our ribbing vertical straight up and down like this, and we're just going to single crochet across the top. This is the part where my mohair always likes to get stuck. Okay, so we single crocheted across the top there. Now we're going to turn our work. We're going to chain 1, then turn our work. Okay, so we have the foundation of our wrist, and now we are going to be alternating half double crochet front loop, half double crochet back loop for 3 inches. So I'm going to start in the back loop for this row. Back loop only, single crochet. Now I'm going to go through the front loop. I'm just going to do that to the very end. So we should be ending on a back loop only at the very last stitch. It also depends on how many rows you did, if they were odd or even numbers, but it's okay. So once we get to the end there, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn it, and you're just going to repeat for about 3 inches. So I'm going to do that. Okay, I have finished my 3 inches of the alternating half double crochet back loop and front loop. If you want to add a few more rows for your hand length, you could do that now. So mine's going to come about to my knuckles. So you can add a couple more rows if you wanted. If not, that's great too. So we're going to do our last rows and then seam it together. Alright, so my last row, I'm going to chain 1. And all we're going to do now is we're just going to single crochet 3 rows to give it kind of just a nice finished look for above the knuckles. Okay, I finished my last 3 rows of single crochet, so now we're just going to seam the sides. So I'm going to cut a tail kind of long because we're going to use it to weave down the side. Okay, I cut my tail off. So now I'm just going to pull that tail through this loop and pull it tight and snug. Okay, so that's our finished piece. So now I'm going to grab my darning needle. Alright, now I'm going to use my darning needle to seam down the side here. Alright, I got my yarn through my darning needle finally. So now what we're going to do is we're going to seam down the side maybe about 1 inch. So I'm just going to put my needle through, pull it tight, go over, push it through there. Pull tight, push it through, pull tight. I'm gonna measure to see. I think that's should be about 1 inch long. Yeah, we're about 1 inch, maybe 1 1/4 over, but that's okay. As long as you get 1 inch. As long as we have enough room for the thumb hole. So I would say about 1 inch. If you go about 1/4 over, that's okay. So my last stitch, I'm going to go through that same stitch again and pull up, and I'm going to knot it, pull it tight, and I'm going to seam it back up through. Again, Sometimes these plastic needles aren't the best, but it's what I had on hand. Okay, so I'm done seaming that part, so I'm going to snip that off. Get rid of that. Next, we are going to seam from the top of this ribbing to the bottom. So I'm gonna just take a piece of my yarn here. I'm actually going to leave the mohair out on this part since we're seaming. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just gonna take a piece of my yarn, just gonna cut it, put it through the darning needle, and then we're gonna seam. So like I said, we're gonna seam. Make sure you match up your ribbing there, the top of your ribbing, and we're just going to seam all the way down to the end there. So I'm going to start here, and what I'm going to do is tie a knot. Tie that tight. Now we can start seaming. I don't fully believe that seaming has to be perfect because it's going to be hidden anyways. As long as you get it closed, I always feel like that's good enough. I try to get it through the same, like I try to match up and get it through the same stitches. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. For me anyways. I'm sure there's easier ways to seam stuff, but this is just how I do it, and I find it's pretty simple. Okay, so I came to my last stitch there, so I'm just gonna go back through, pull up a loop, and pull that needle through so I can knot it. And then I'm just gonna pull my my yarn back through a couple just to kind of weave it in there. And now I'm gonna cut that. All right, I'm gonna cut that off. All right, so we have this kind of little tail here. So I'm gonna go back with my crochet hook and I'm gonna weave these in. The same way I did when I had my darning needle, I'm just gonna pull this extra yarn through a couple stitches. Same on this end, I'm gonna go through this side. Yep. Pull it through. And that's good enough for me, so I'm going to snip those. Okay, the last thing, I'm going to turn it inside out so we get a nice seam. If you see any ends sticking out, just take your darning needle and you can push it back through the other side. Okay, so we finished our fingerless glove. Now we can put it on. As you can see, there's enough room for the thumb hole. If you wanted to, you could always single crochet a few rounds on the thumb if you wanted kind of a little bit of a thumb covering, but I like to leave mine open. You can add rows to this, like I said, to make your circumference bigger. If you need this to be taller, all you have to do is add more rows, and that is it. And we finished our crochet fingerless gloves.